there, you're listening to the Bigfoot Society podcast, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Every week I talk to individuals who have experienced Sasquatch in some way or another, so you won't want to miss an episode. Make sure you're subscribed on the platform that you're listening to, and share this episode with a friend. It does not cost a thing, and it helps the show continue to grow. If you'd like to hear Bigfoot Society episodes early and ad-free, you can do so by becoming a Patreon supporter or a YouTube channel member. Links to those are in the show notes. In Bigfoot Society, I've taken far too much of your time so far, so let's get on with the show. What follows is my presentation about Bigfoot in Iowa from the 2023 Van Meter Visitor Festival in Van Meter, Iowa. The audio quality might be different than what you're expecting, but due to the requests of many listeners, I am releasing this audio as an episode. Enjoy.
Jeremiah Byron is the host of the Bigfoot Society podcast and is based out of Madison County, Iowa, that is. He views Bigfoot as the last great mystery we have. Notice I will not insert any Mothman comments here. He also enjoys uncovering Iowa Bigfoot history. Please welcome Jeremiah Byron back to the Van Meter Visitor Festival.
Yeah! All right, it's great to be back at the Van Meter Visitor Festival. How many people were here last year for the talk that I did? Show of hands? A few people. All right, so some people might care about something. So last year I was talking about the Iowa Bigfoot Information Center and about how there was the search for Clifford LeBrec's Bigfoot statue. If you listen to the Bigfoot Society podcast, you will already know this, but the statue replica was found at, it was found down in Arkansas at Clifford's residence before he passed. The great news, and you can hear this if you listen to my episode with David Becerra, who is the owner of the Expedition Bigfoot Museum. He did purchase that replica statue, and that statue, taxidermy, whatever you want to call it, does preside down in Georgia now. Now, it's not part of the museum yet. It's in a storage unit in hopes of a second museum that he might be making. So soon enough, you will be able to see Clifford LeBrec's Bigfoot on display, just not yet. Also, another side note, remember I had said that we couldn't find all of the things that Clifford and Kevin had discovered in the 70s when they would travel around Bigfoot and take all the reports, the tracks, the documentation. That unfortunately was all stolen from Clifford's residence, and no one knows where it is. So that's kind of the unfortunate footnote. The other cool thing, though, to tag it on is Kevin Cook actually reached out to me again. He is almost 80 years old now, and he was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "Kevin, would you ever come on the podcast to kind of talk about what happened back in the 70s with your Iowa Bigfoot Information Center?" He's like, "Yeah, it's time. I'll come on, and we're going to get it all documented." So you want to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss out on, it should be in the next few months, my chat with Kevin Cook. So super excited about that, and hopefully, there you are, we can find out why Renee DeHinden was actually in Iowa. I really hope he remembers. So here we go. Let's continue. That's kind of part 2 from last year. So who am I? My name is Jeremiah Byron. I am the host of the Bigfoot Society podcast. It's a podcast where I primarily talk to people about their Bigfoot encounters. So if you like listening to that sort of thing, you will love this show. I am crazy, and I pretty much put something out every day. So if you really like it, you will like it. But it is fantastic. About every 5 to 6 emails a day from people all over the U.S. talking about, I had this happen. I'm ready to talk about this now. Will you talk to me? And it's enough that I can barely keep up with documenting these stories, which is the best problem in the world to have. Also, Bigfoot Society is a safe and respectful platform for witnesses to share their Bigfoot encounters. Unfortunately, some people will say, I don't want to share my Bigfoot encounter because I'm going to get made fun of. People at my job are going to try to get me canned, stuff like that. Well, I've tried to make a safe spot for people to share their encounters. So I would love, if anyone is comfortable, you can raise your hand. If not, that's fine. But how many people think they have seen Bigfoot in the realm? Right? Anyone raise your hands? Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Oh, yeah. I talked to you earlier. That was rocking. I've also talked to a few people have come up to the booth. I have a booth over there. We will talk about some encounters that I took actually today in a little bit. How I got into Bigfoot. Well, first off, I listened to watched In Search of Bigfoot with my dad when I was a little kid. And then in the Van Meter Visitor Festival a few years back, my buddy Andrew had me be involved with the taping of Terror in the Skies by Small Town Monsters, which is a great documentary. If you love the Van Meter Visitor, you will also love that one. So after that, I started my own podcast and started talking to people about Bigfoot and other cryptids. Let's see. Now, the question is, what is Bigfoot? Now, there's a few things. Does everyone know what Bigfoot is? Raise your hands. You know what Bigfoot is? Let me see them. Yeah, we're pretty good like that. At this festival, you should know. But if you don't know, a little bit of that is the famous Patterson Gimlin film. Yes, you got it. Good job, buddy. October 20th, 1967, the capture of the Bigfoot walking across the Bluff Creek area. Cross your fingers for Bluff Creek. There are some fires very close to that film site, and we are all holding our breath that hopefully it remains unburnt. We will see. Oxford definition: a large, hairy, ape-like creature resembling a yeti, supposedly found in northwestern America. Now, that's really basic because, there's some people that think, okay, we might be looking at a creature that can go through portals. It can go through different dimensions. Maybe it's a wild man or some kind of man that is between the different evolutionary positions. But that's the Oxford definition if you want to know. Now, I thought it would be interesting. Let's look into how Bigfoot is reported in Iowa. So currently, I, along with you, have access to the BFRO public database, which, if you like them or not, that's fine. It's still information that we can look up on the internet. So I took a little bit of time and I was looking through all these reports, and I was like, well, how has it been reported when these witnesses see Bigfoot? What are they seeing in the great state of Iowa? Well, here's some examples. This one's from July 16th, 2004, Buchanan County. Covered in reddish brown hair, not much of a neck, head sunk into the shoulders, hands come to or below its knees, usually lower than the knees, about 7 feet tall, weighed about 500 pounds, looked like an ape-type thing, had an ape-human-like face. So that's one. We've got 1978 BFRO, Dallas County. One of the creatures was taller at about 7 feet, and the second was about a foot shorter. He said they have long swinging arms, a short neck, black hair from head to toe, so that's a different color there. It was upright on 2 feet. Color was described to be gray-brown, much like a tree. Height estimated at 7 feet. 2015, that's from the BFRO, Dubuque County. Here's another one, 1970 BFRO, Fayette County. This is in the northeastern section of the state. It was big, at least 8 feet tall, coned head to feet with dark brown hair, had a barrel-shaped body with long arms and legs. It just walked like a human, taking long strides and swinging its arms. So going over this information, we can kind of get a picture of what we're expecting to see in this state. 7 to 8 feet tall, different colors, but you've got the coned, conical head, the arms that are always at least past the knee, usually lower, barrel-shaped body, not a neck seen, and of course kind of walking like a human, like that classic video if you've ever seen that. So that's kind of what we're looking into. If we're going out, that's what we can expect to see. Now, I want to take a few minutes to go over Iowa Bigfoot history, especially since I had the privilege of talking to a lady came up to the booth earlier, and she was talking about her 1978 encounter. And I was like, oh my goodness, 1978. And I realized, not everyone is crazy about Bigfoot like I am. So they don't get it that in 1978 in Iowa, there were a massive amount of Bigfoot sightings. It was like our just crazy explosion. And she was like, oh, there were other sightings in 1978 in Iowa? Holy mackerel, yes. And you don't want to miss what I'm going to be going over because you're going to see about it. So that is a picture I showed last year of Clifford Lebrecht and Kevin Cook. The gentleman in the back I'll be talking to in a few weeks, hopefully. He's about 80 years old right now. That's their replica Bigfoot that was made by the same guy that made the African elephant in the Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. Some museum quality Bigfoot hopefully will be on display soon enough. Here we go. These are from the Des Moines Register in the 70s. And this is just to get you a feel about what we were looking at back in the 70s. And I do want to give credit where credit is due. Going into David Weatherly's book, Hawkeye Cryptids, if you haven't gotten that, it is, of course, sold out because, it's an amazing book and everyone here needs to get it. But you can still get it on Amazon and Kindle. You need to get the book because it's 80 pages of Bigfoot history throughout the years, but also other cryptids. So that's my plug for David's book. That book made me go deep into the subject more than I already was through the podcast. So here's a few things. You can see where all these different footprints are, were different places where Bigfoot was seen in the 1970s. You can see the different areas. A is Humboldt. You got D in the south. You got B, which is kind of around Jefferson County. There's some stuff there, but you got West Bend. Odison was a large amount of Bigfoot sightings. Renwick, Humboldt was a lot. You've got out in Clarion. Here's a few articles I'll share. Clarion, Iowa, 1078. This one's interesting. Dark image peered through a kitchen window at 1030. Police officers obtained a plaster cast, all this good stuff. There are some where they think might be a hoax, but a lot of them were pretty dead on. Here's another one from Odison. Dozen people report seeing a Bigfoot-like creature in the Odison area. Apologies if I'm saying that wrong. Also, there are reports of mutilated animals, strange footprints, and stampeding cattle. That's always crazy. This one is my favorite from Humboldt, Iowa, September 1978. It's cool because a family 3 miles northeast of Humboldt, they were hearing strange howls, right? And it's so crazy because they were calling the sheriff's office, and during the phone call, the sheriff could hear the howls over the phone. That's wild that you're hearing that much crazy action.
That's weird.
I know, right? Creature. September 1978, a gentleman scared a creature off by honking the horn and flashing the lights of a pickup. Footprints that ended in a wooded area. Wild stuff. Here's another area. This is down by Skunk River, Pella. Oskaloosa had some. And let's see. We had a young boy, 10 or 11 years old, saw Bigfoot on the road near a bridge near Pella. That was in the snow, so it was in the winter. There's just so many articles to share here. We've got tracks on a snowmobile around Harvey. Oskaloosa, there was a gentleman, one of the Iowa Bigfoot Information Center, a woman who lived northeast of Oskaloosa near the Skunk River, had seen a Bigfoot come out from the shadow of a tree during a heavy snowstorm. Just wild, wild stuff. We've got Stevens State Forest. Stevens State Forest is a weird place because it comes up in the literature, and then I talked to Kevin before, and I was like, why was Stevens State Forest so unique? And he's like, I can't remember. I'm almost 80 years old, and I haven't thought about this stuff for 40 years. And I'm like, all right, I'll cut you a break. Moved away from Iowa, moved somewhere else, and then went on with his life, had a family, and then this crazy dude, 40 years later, called him up and was like, hey, you used to be into Bigfoot in the 70s. You want to talk about it? And he actually contacted me back, which is wild. So we've got, all we know is sightings and strange sounds in a section of Stevens State Forest. Who knows? Let's see, there's also some in Moulton. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. A fun one is the Lockridge Monster. Has anyone heard of the Lockridge Monster? few people rocking. So this is back in the 70s. The Lockridge Monster was seen in Lockridge, Iowa. It's a smaller Bigfoot, and it had almost the face of a monkey. That's reported. You kind of heard that earlier in another report. So the thing is that this farmer, I believe his name was Herb Pfeiffer, had this creature they saw, and it kept messing with the animals in his farm, like eating the turkeys, all that crazy stuff. But it got to the point that the newspapers got a hold of it. And the Pfeiffers were just, news people were coming out to the farm trying to mess with them. And it got to the point where they just shut it down. They were like, we're not going to talk about it anymore. They may have seen stuff in later years. They just didn't talk about it. That's kind of something I'm researching, so stay tuned. But yeah, monkey-faced bear, like creatures, slaughters farm animals. Now, let's take a few minutes to talk about why is Iowa great for Bigfoot? Because a lot of people I've talked to today, they're like, yeah, I don't know. Iowa sounds like it's all corn, and I don't think we got Bigfoot here. Like, do we have Bigfoot in Madison County or Dallas County? Sure, we do. We totally do. So I'm going to share a few maps with you here. First thing I want, and this is kind of like a geographical map of the state of Iowa, right? Now, do you see all flat corn lands? I don't think so. If you're not familiar with this type of map, if you see the parts like on the eastern side of the state where it's all kind of like wrinkly and bumpy, that means there's some crazy hills, there's some crazy gulches, maybe some ridges. That's the stuff that Bigfoot likes to hang out with. So like this area, you can see a lot of crazy stuff. Jefferson County, tons of reports over the years. Also, if you watch the Finding Bigfoot episode back in the day about, I know you guys are talking about that, Finding Bigfoot, Yellow River, I think it was, that's up here. There's a ton of reports up in that area. Here's another interesting thing. So if you've seen Missing 411, they talk about like, Pat, I was talking to you about that earlier, sir. And they talk about there has to be a food source. It makes sense that a large creature is going to need a huge caloric intake. Now check this out. This is Iowa's whitetail hot zones. You'll notice that there's not a ton of the deer killed per square mile up here. But down here, there's a ton of deer. Might make sense why we see a lot more Bigfoot sightings in this area. So we know that certain areas definitely have the food source available for them. Here's another way to look at the elevation. You can kind of see on the eastern part of the state, you definitely have some crazy hills going on. This is interesting. So, and it may not look interesting, but if you have known about the NAWAC guys down in southeast Oklahoma, I believe it was Dr. Russ Jones on Wide Open Research was talking about, you want to look for the places where there's a lot of annual rainfall, like there's kind of a high amount. So what do we notice about this map? Not in the whole state, but definitely down here, there is a high amount of, there's 39 annual rainfall inches per year. That's pretty cool. That kind of shows us there could be something else going on here. I just want to shout out this guy, my friend Scott from the Bigfoot Mapping Project. If you don't know about this and you like Bigfoot, you need to check it out. But this is kind of cool because there's a map he made. He's done this for every state, Iowa's Bigfoot byways, and you can kind of see, going off of the data he has, that there could be these different areas where Bigfoot might be able to travel around different wooded byways. And some of these, if you were to overlay this, really get into it, you could kind of see, yes, some of these are by big state parks or forests that have had lots of action. So it's just another way to be like, yeah, we've got stuff going on for sure. Just to point out, southeast Iowa is a place where I get a lot of reports from, extremely forested and gulches, super hilly. That's your Jefferson County, Shemek State Forest maybe, stuff like that. We got northeast Iowa, extremely forested and gulches, hilly, many places to hide. So we're doing good on time. I'm going to share a few encounters. And this has been my favorite festival because I've never had people come up to me and be like, you know what? I actually had something happen. Let me show it to you, or let me talk to you about it. And I was like, oh, this is great. Can I talk about it in my presentation? They were like, absolutely. So we're going to do some very new reports here. But I want to talk about what I had in my presentation first. So this is a fun one. Yeah, I know. I heard Sailorville, right? Get ready. This is so weird. So I had this lady contact me on Instagram, and she's like, I got to tell you something that was weird. So I was going out to the southwest part of Sailorville Lake, which is central Iowa. Everyone's probably familiar with it. It's a huge lake out there. And she was going there at night, and, she was just hanging out. And all of a sudden, like, she sees this thing in the bushes, lit up eyes. It rushes at her. She barely gets back in her car. Crazy. And like up to this point, I'm like, okay, sounds interesting. I hear a lot of these, but the twist is what she said about what happened the next day. So she goes back to Sailorville because she's like, I need to look more into this. I need to see what happened. And she's on one of the beaches at Sailorville Lake, and these random people come up to her and they're like, hey, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, well, I was just kind of looking around at stuff. And she didn't want to lead right into the Bigfoot stuff, right? Because some people think that's weird. Who knew, right? But what she said was, the random person was like, hey, you ever seen any monkey people around here? Just, randomly. And she was like, oh my goodness, what's happening around Sailorville Lake? So I don't know. It's a weird one. And that happened in fall of, I think it was a few years ago. And so I put on my skeptical hat for a minute. I was like, well, what? We have a research center in Des Moines around the Easter Lake. And I was like, well, what if there's an escaped monkey, right? So I contacted them. And I was like, you guys didn't have any escaped monkeys around this time? They're like, no, stop talking to us. we keep our monkeys under lock and key. But they're a great facility, though. They do great research. So that's a weird one. I'm not really sure. I need to really spend some time around Sailorville, I think. Another weird thing about Sailorville Lake, and this is not Bigfoot related, but if you go to phantomsandmonsters.com with Lon Strickler, he just released an article where there was a humanoid sighting around Sailorville Lake, like back in 2017. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is up with this area? And it's just in central Iowa, so maybe keep your eyes open if you go there. Goldner Woods sighting, here's a fun one. So if you're from Madison County, you're from Earlham, there's actually been Bigfoot sightings in Earlham. Around Goldner Woods, there was a road sighting. And also my friend Tate Hieronymus, who's a researcher, was there and actually heard some wood knocks one night a few years ago. So there is stuff going on in Madison County. Also, a gentleman who's here is allowing me to share this. We got a few things. Back in the 90s in Earlham, him and his buddies were in a gravel pit area. There was a large rock that was thrown at them out of nowhere. That's one of those things that makes you wonder, like, what is it that could just chuck a huge rock at them? We had a yard sale this year in our hometown over in Madison County, and I was passing out my card, and I was like, here, check out my podcast. And a guy was like, a weird thing in Camel Park down in Winterset. So supposedly him and his buddies back in the 80s, they were driving around, and all of a sudden they go around a corner in Pamel, and they say there's a Bigfoot in their headlights. And they said they took a shot at it. Now, it's one of those things where it's like, I heard it from a guy who heard it from a guy who heard it from a guy type deal. So I'm not sure, but it's just cool that there are these stories around here in Iowa. Let's continue here. I try not to use AI art anymore because I'd rather support the artist, and I don't like AI. Like, let's not let Skynet happen. Let's support the artist. So I'm like, I used to have AI art, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't use this anymore. And there's not a lot of really cool Bigfoot pictures that are not AI art. So I use this one. This is a different situation in Iowa. But I do have a recent episode, if you want to check it out, where a gentleman was looking for, I believe it was different minerals, and him and his buddy went to a spot in southeast Iowa, and they're cooking kielbasa at this campground, and he's like, we started hearing weird noises, which I thought was an elk at first, and my buddy's like, there's no elk in Iowa anymore. And then I'm really summarizing the episode, but they started hearing what they said sound like Sierra sounds. and they heard, here's a campsite. They hear a whoop over here, a whoop over here, a whoop over here. They're like, we're surrounded. This is not good. It got to the point where they get so freaked out that they're trying to tear down their tents and get out of there. One guy's like, I'm not tearing my tent apart. I want to take the poles out. And he's like, we're going to get us killed. This is wild. And he's showing his flashlight up and actually saw something in the woods leap away. And he's like, I don't care. We are out of here. So that's at a certain wooded area in Iowa. That's a few episodes back if you want to listen to that. There's also a gentleman who contacted me, Lansing, Iowa, 2003, squirrel hunting. He was chased out of the woods by a creature that sounded like a deep chimp, or a chimp with a deep voice, and that beat its chest like a gorilla. And he would just skedaddle out of there. This gentleman actually went on the Bigfoot Crossroads podcast, so you can actually hear his encounter on that. So some people, podcasters, are like, I don't want to shout out other podcasts. Dude, I love shouting out other people because, the waves raise each other. Why not help each other out? Potential Bigfoot areas. Let me share the encounters that I took here today. So these are some interesting ones. A gentleman came up to the booth and he said back in Minburn in the 1980s, he and his buddies were around a river and they saw a Bigfoot in the river. They could see it kind of sticking out of the water, his hair coming down because it was wet. And so just a really interesting anecdotal episode. He has agreed to chatting on the podcast. So hopefully we'll hear more about that. A lady came up to me about an incident in Madrid, 1978, Bigfoot. Along a riverside as well, near a river, and there was Bigfoot. She felt that was right behind her. So there's definitely more to that story. We're going to get that story, and she's agreed to come on the podcast as well. There was a couple that came up to the booth where they were out in Newton in 2019, and they're painters, but they found a footprint, and they were able to cast the footprint. This is by a KOA, I believe, campground. So this year has been phenomenal at the festival as people are aware that Bigfoot is coming into Iowa. It's in Iowa, or they feel good enough so that they can actually share these stories. I just wanted to point out a few areas. So we've got the northeast part. This is where a Yellow River is, and these are geographic area maps. We've got this area can have some fun. You've got Shemek State Forest. That part's pretty wild. I like the southern Iowa drift plain because that's where we are over here. And over in this area, Jefferson has so many crazy Bigfoot encounters. And I'm just going to do a little teaser because I'm researching something and I got to get my stuff right first. But let's just say some stuff that happened in the 1970s didn't stop happening in the 1970s. And that's all I can say because I don't have my stuff. But I can do a little Marvel, Nick Fury, foreshadowing thing there. So just, subscribe to the podcast. Hopefully I'll get my stuff together. The goal is to go full time with the podcast by the end of 2024, and it's going to happen. So then we're really going to go crazy and start traveling. So get ready. Boone is a cool area too. So Boone up by the railroad. I've gotten a few fun interaction reports up here. So keep your eyes open around Boone. And also the Raccoon River over here. Oh my goodness, there's so many Raccoon River reports. So if you're in the campsites by the Raccoon River, keep your eyes open. It could get wild. This over here, so the Dubuque area, there's so many reports that come out of Dubuque. There's a gentleman that he was talking about how this area, all I can say, because he's like, I'm going to make a book on it. So, keep it on the DL. I'm like, okay, I'll keep on the DL. But all I'm going to say is this area, keep your eyes open because I have never heard reports to the extent, the number of reports in any other place in Iowa. But this area right here, Dubuque, oh my goodness. This area, Jefferson County, keep your eyes open down here. And of course, we have up in the northeast section. Already went over there. Oh, so we got a few minutes left. So a few people might be curious, how do I go look for Bigfoot? at the end of the day, you're really good. It's like you're going camping, but you're kind of getting ready to see a huge ape creature in the woods that could mess you up. So just be careful of that. But, you want to have things like camping gear, backpack, a tent. Tell people where you're going, please, for Pete's sake. If you have the Onyx app, you can give an exact location. So important to let your, loved ones or whoever know so that you don't get lost out there and then you're in trouble. Bigfooting gear, if you really want to get into it, you can I recommend a Tascam audio recorder. And once you get to the area, have it recording once you leave the car, because a lot of times when you go out, these researchers will hear the wood knocks. They'll capture them right after they turn off their car, because from what they think, a few of them that I talked to, the Bigfoot are signaling once they leave the car, hey, these guys are in the area. Or as you're leaving, sometimes you'll hear the knock and it's like, okay, they're finally leaving. Thank goodness. Also, the cool thing is a lot of us have our phone devices. So remember, you can record audio with your phone. You can record video with your phone. You can keep a notated diary of what happened during your expedition. Please keep that, because you get months down the road and you won't remember what happened. Super important. There's a few basic things, but I do want to mention real quick, keep an eye out on my buddy Tate Hieronymus is going to come out with a documentary again this year. We did go to a certain area in this August, me and him and some others, to look for Bigfoot. And I'm holding off on that info because I don't want to spoil his documentary. So I'll shout it out in a few months. A few things as we are getting near the end. Did you meet Kevin Cook or Clifford LeBrecq and see their traveling Iowa Bigfoot Information Center exhibit in the 1970s at the State Fair? I would really like to talk to you about it. It would be fantastic. And if you had pictures, it'd be so cool. You can contact me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. If you have Bigfoot encounters in Madison and Dallas County, or really anywhere in Iowa, please feel that you can reach out to me through my email. This is a side thing about the Van Meter Visitor. I've heard that the Van Meter Visitor has been seen in the woods behind an elementary school. If there's truth to that, please reach out to me. I think that would be really cool. Any Bigfoot stories, I'm your guy. If you need to be anonymous, I can make sure you're anonymous. To hear interviews with Bigfoot witnesses and more, learn more about Bigfoot, you can go to bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And this is my phone number. Don't worry, it's a Google Voice number, so don't be, oh my goodness, he's putting out his actual phone number. It's fine. But please make a note of this. If there's I need to talk to this guy, and you can't make it out over to my booth, please send me a text, leave me a voicemail, and then we can start the conversation about what you experienced. But again, thank you for listening. If you haven't come up to the booth yet, please head over to the Bigfoot Society booth. I would love to talk to you about what you experienced, if you had a Bigfoot encounter, and we can start from there. But again, who knows what the future will bring. Thank you so much for listening today.
Here at Bigfoot Society, our goal is to provide a platform for those that have encountered Bigfoot to share their encounter in a safe and respected environment. But we need to hear your story. If you've experienced something that you just can't explain, please send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Then we can start the conversation. I know a lot of you have not shared your encounter at all. It's been 20 years, and it's time that you get this off your chest, and then you can get some well-deserved rest, because I know you haven't been sleeping. I understand what you're going through, and I appreciate every one of you listening.